So this interview is part of a series called Live with Locals, and it's a part of our Book to Action program, which is funded by the California Center of the Book through a grant. Our topic is sustainability, so that's why we thought it'd be great to talk to you guys at the community garden. And all of our events and programs were inspired by the book Breeding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and we hope that everyone was able to get a copy. And before we begin, feel free to visit the link in our bio afterward to learn more about this grant program and other upcoming events. All right, so we're here today with Kristin from the Monrovia Community Garden, who is our garden director. Hi, Kristin.
Hello.
So can you share with us what exactly the Monrovia Community Garden is?
Yeah, so the Monrovia Community Garden started as two different entities exploring how to do sustainability in Monrovia. So one being Mountainside Communion Church and the other being the city. We'd already been doing housing initiatives at the church with the city, city programs. And so unbeknownst to us, the city had been doing a year-long research project after the Parks Master Plan listed, and I might get this wrong, but I know we were number 3 behind like fixing sidewalks and lighting, that the community wanted a community garden. So we didn't know that at the time. And we said, hey, we noticed that a lot of these partnerships are between cities and different nonprofits and entities. And Oliver Chi was the city manager at the time, and city council jumped on board. Oliver Chi jumped on board. Tina and Heather over at the Parks Department were awesome. So we started a 3-year pilot starting in November of 2018 was the agreement. And then we built that garden so quickly using all reclaimed wood, San Gabriel Valley, and launched in, let's see, it was July 2019. So we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary.
Ooh, congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, so 21 raised beds for rent, lack of a better term, and then 8 beds are dedicated to community public education, and they're open to everybody. So that's really unique about our community garden.
That's cool. So what exactly does the rent part mean? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so the program for the pilot period right now, we're about to enter our 3rd year. And we rent means it's $60 a year. So a lot of community gardens have some kind of fee. Okay. But Monrovia also has scholarships available for anybody who want them. And the program is open to Monrovia families and households, individuals. You either have to live in Monrovia or you have to have kids that attend Monrovia schools. Okay. So those are the parameters right now. And then we've always been full, which is great. But the 1-year application process, everyone has to reapply. So right now we've had a great thing happen where the number of people that left after the 1st year and the number of people that wanted to apply has always balanced out. So we've never had to like kick anybody out of the program. But yeah, I can talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, we have our fee.
Cool. Okay, let's dive in. To compost. Why compost? What is compost?
What is compost? So probably don't dive into it unless you work at the really love compost. But yeah, why compost? Are we starting there, or what is compost? What would you like to start with?
Let's start with what.
What is compost? Okay. So compost is basically everything that breaks down and what it becomes is the most easiest way to say that. But what you want is a rich organic material to come out of food scraps. You think of like dried leaves, even, it depends on what type of compost we can talk about in a minute. But in terms of what compost is, it's all stuff that used to be alive. And when it dies, it turns into something new so that more things can grow. So it's poetic and it's also really sustainable.
Awesome. So why should we be composting?
So why composting? This is probably one of the easiest things you can do, especially in Monrovia. We've made it pretty accessible. And it's one of the easiest ways to help out with food waste. So food waste is becoming a huge issue, especially in the United States, but all over the world. The average household throws out 40% of our food. And so when you think about that, it's like Sprouts had organic strawberries on sale last week, right? So
Yeah.
I thought I had time this week to make jam. So I'm not saying that I'm doing this perfectly, but I bought a lot of pounds of strawberries, and 4 pounds of those are going to end up as jam. But you know, just stuff happens, life happens, and we end up throwing a lot of food away. And so what happens is if that all goes to the landfill, it doesn't break down in a way that is beneficial for our environment. So when loads of vegetables, like in the beginning of COVID, go to the landfill, that's really bad because it releases methane. If it breaks down in a compost pile where it's layered with browns and greens, we'll get into in a minute, then it breaks down with the right organisms and in a way where you can put it back in your garden and you're not releasing methane. So, and it's also just like super easy to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what takes place in the composting process once the materials are added into a bin?
Yeah. So I wish we had the technology to do this outside and I could like show you everything, but I'll try to do my best to the organic process that it is.
Thank you.
But what you're doing is you're taking your kitchen scraps, and what you really want to do is use your kitchen scraps, like, you know, you're chopping up an onion or zucchinis or this stuff, and the ends that you're not going to eat, your carrot peels, those kinds of things. The smaller it is, the better. And those are things that we call greens, like coffee grounds, kitchen scraps. I didn't write all the list down, but I know that you have that beautiful graphic that you tea bags. Those would all be considered like the green matter. And then you have your browns, which is like your ripped up Trader Joe's bags or grocery bags, your newspaper that's not wax coated or printed, your leaves from your trees around your yard or household, or you can get mulch, which is what we have at the community garden. And then what you want to do is you layer that. Ideally, you would have 1 part greens to 2 parts browns. So that means if you have a cup of vegetable scraps, you'd have 2 cups of your browns. And so you just layer that. And then in an active compost pile, so one that's being used, one that's being turned, it gets really hot. And so in that heat, the organisms activate, the heat kills the pathogens and the things that are really bad. And unless that heat is really monitored, that's why we don't, this is kind of jumping into your next question, that's why we don't recommend meat and dairy, because there's a difference between rotting food and food that's compost rot. So that's a really important distinction, because if it's not rotting in the right way, there's a right way to rot.
If that's our takeaway for today, that'd be amazing.
So the microorganisms, you won't have the right ones.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, now I'm really bad.
Yay.
Trying to find it.
You look good.
Okay, so you layer your browns and your greens. And there's Neil. We're talking about community partnerships. This guy, Neil, Pastor Neil at St. Luke's. I have an office in his basement. So I'm doing a live stream at the library right now. I needed better Wi-Fi. So I'm going to have to do it in the hallway if you don't mind. So I see the question, what about oranges? And in small amounts, anything is fine except for the meat and the dairy, which we talked about right before we got cut off. But oranges, if you juice one morning and you have 100 oranges, don't put that in your compost, because then it gets way too acidic. So you want a little of everything, not too much of anything.
Okay.
Coming up with all the good little lines today. So in terms of compost, that's a good way to look about it. Variety is best. And meat and dairy, what I was starting to say about that before we got cut off is you really want that hot compost, if it's going to be an active compost pile, to be 140 degrees or above.
Wow.
And ideally about like 150 to 160. And like I was saying, there's the right way to rot. So you don't want to invite any nasty pathogens into those piles. So that's why we don't allow that at our community compost pile, is we want to make sure it's really healthy when we put it back into the garden. So that's some things that you should and shouldn't. Yeah.
Cool. And if you have any questions regarding what to exclude or include, we'll have a list of things posted with our other information afterwards. Let's see. Why do you think gardens benefit a community?
So this is a really beautiful question for the Monrovia Community Garden, and that's the experience that I can speak from. Is I think, you know, we thought a community garden, it'll be great. And we wanted to provide people access to grow their own fruits and veggies, and but nobody could have predicted what could have happened. And I think what's really neat and what the city has seen and what we've seen running the community garden as the city program is that people are involved in the garden that probably wouldn't have been involved in other things in the city. And that's not true of everybody, but it's been neat to see this unique group form friendships and say, hey, you know, I'm growing some sage and I have too much and I'm going to give this to you. And not only that, but what's been really special is also the education program. And so we haven't had a wait list of 20 or 40 or 50 people. Everybody that's been on the wait list has actually been offered a plot. So that's really special. And also, if Monrovia wants another community garden, get on the wait list and build that with me so we could get one. But right now, really the hunger and the thing that's happening in Monrovia is people really have loved the education program that's come with the garden. And so we run every other month workshops. And so our community garden, not only is it unique in that we have the workshops, it's also really great that we have the corner garden too, because anybody can come and take, anybody can come and learn at that garden. And so we know from research that community gardens, you know, people eat more vegetables. It actually helps with property prices. There's just some really amazing things. But I think what's so special is that all these people are my friends now. And, you know, and not everybody is like jumping in and volunteering at every single thing. You know, you don't have to do that either. It's not part of the program, but people have wanted to. And so pre-COVID, we were having pop-up nights every 3 weeks, and we were out on the corner sharing recipes, and people walking by with their dogs were invited in, and what are you guys doing? What's happening? And so I think this is one community garden, and we've gotten feedback from the community even of like, this feels inclusive. This feels like a community garden that I can walk into and be part of, even though I don't have a bed. And so the word community is something that we've just taken seriously from the beginning. And we've now, bad pun, we've seen the fruits of that labor, right? Like we've seen the fruit happening. It's just an amazing group of people. And so we had a volunteer night this week. It's one of our first ones back with like actual volunteers. And just hanging out, you know, like I make everybody answer cheesy icebreaker questions like, what vegetable are you? You know, things like that. So it feels, I never want people to come to the garden and feel like, oh, I just went and weeded, you know, like I want it to be a place of learning and engagement. So yeah.
Cool. What vegetable are you?
Oh, today or always?
Always.
My go-to answer is a purple carrot, because on the surface I might look like any other carrot, but when you pull me up, you might be surprised at what you find. So
very nice. That's a hard question. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about it.
You have to go deep, and then people get really nervous that they're going to answer wrong. I'm like, it's you as a vegetable. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer there. Oh boy. Okay, well, how can
what would you be?
Sorry?
What would you be?
I really have to think about it, because I don't want to come off as like I'm a tomato because I'm bright and juicy. No, I don't know. I have to really think about it. I don't know.
I like it.
Probably a potato, just because I love potatoes so much. Oh, yeah, okay.
Potato's a good one.
Yeah. I think you touched on how the average community member can get involved in the garden. I guess I could ask, since there's so much interest already in the garden that exists, are there plans to extend or make another one, like you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so that's the tricky thing is there's interest in our education classes. They've been some of these most popular classes in COVID. We've been on Zoom. We've never closed the garden. Okay. But yeah, our wait list right now I think has 2 people on it, and we don't have an overwhelming. Is to give out the applications. You can find them on our website, which is monroviacommunitygarden.org, and turn in an application if you live in Monrovia or if you have kids in the school district, and get on the wait list. The city is really happy with the program. We're really happy with the program. But if there's not an expressed need for another garden, in terms of like a wait list of 50 people or 20 people, then there won't be another garden. And maybe that's okay in our community. You know, context is important. What has been needed is people having education around how to grow things, how to compost. The community compost bin has been a huge success. So we've diverted almost 6 tons of food waste out of the landfill. So that's open 24/7 to anybody who wants to drop off their kitchen scraps. We have mulch on site. And so that's also been a surprise. And so we're actually trying to expand the compost program more so than having another garden, unless all of a sudden we have a huge wait list. So, but the wait list, everybody, I'm so proud that everybody that's been on the wait list, or proud to say this, has been offered a spot. So far we don't have a community garden. You hear of community gardens where, I mean, and this is beautiful, where like the wait list is 50 people long. I've been on the wait list for 3 years. So I don't know what the program will look like after the 3-year pilot. But overall, the city has really been happy with the program. And then the other way that people can get involved is we have just a little tiny volunteer application. We have a very dedicated 2-year commitment garden leadership team. So they're responsible for like helping me lead the classes. I think Judy's still on this call. She's the tomato queen of Monrovia. So she's doing a tomato class on July 10th, everyone. July 10th, all things tomatoes.
Good to know.
But then we also opened up a seasonal volunteer list. So if you'd love to volunteer, send me an email at info@monroviacommunitygarden.org and we'll get you on the seasonal volunteer list. And so what happens then is we send out a message when we're going to do a volunteer day, and we say, hey, we need like 3 people. Can anybody come out? And if you can, great. If you can't, great. This isn't like a strings attached deal for our seasonal volunteers. Our garden leadership team is like the dedicated, like they help plan the corner, they help plan events, they set the education agenda for the year. So that's like a much more intense commitment of like 5 to 10 hours a week. And that opens up. We just filled our few spots that we had for that a few months ago. But seasonal volunteers are always open. Okay,
yeah, that's great. It looks like we have a question. Are there opportunities for scholarships if someone can't afford the fees?
Completely. If you can't afford the fee, we always have scholarships available for people. So yeah.
Awesome.
And also, I want to say this about the wait list. Even if you're like on the fence about it, just get on the wait list, because you can always say no. I feel like people are really reticent to get on the wait list because they're like, oh, I'm committing to something. Like, you're not. You don't have to say yes when your spot comes. So we had a gentleman who got on the wait list the first year, and then when a bed came available, I offered it to him, and he's like, you know what, I just retired and I'm hanging out with my grandkids and I don't have time. I'm like, fabulous, great, okay, we'll circle back. But yeah, you're not signing anything in blood or anything like that if you get on the wait list. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, if you guys have any questions, please submit them. And so regarding the compost bin on site, can you explain where exactly it is and how to access it?
Yes, so it's on the alley. So the garden is on the corner of Colorado and Magnolia, but the compost bin is off of Magnolia. There's an alley right there. And so there's a parking lot behind the church facility, behind the garden. And then if you drive into the alley, you'll see this redwood bin that's back there. And so you'll see 3 different bins, and there's one bin that says open ad. And there's also on my Instagram, or on the community garden Instagram, a highlight reel that walks people through how to use it. Pre-COVID, we had a little weigh station, and that was really fun to see like how much people were bringing, and they would write it down. With that, we have that closed just for less contact in COVID, but we do have it open. There's a hand sanitizer on the side if you would like to sanitize your hands now, as anywhere. But yeah, it's open 24/7. And what we ask is there's a few easy ways to do this. So if you're like, I can't start a compost pile at home, and if it's hot compost, you know, it's one thing. If it's cold compost, you're just throwing stuff in a pile in your backyard, it'll take a while to break down, but it will break down eventually. Our compost pile fills up really quickly, and we have a really great, one of our volunteers is managing that right now. And it gets really hot, so it's breaking down pretty fast. And you open up the big, huge lid. There's a thing on the side if you want to prop it open. You dump in what you have. And this is probably one of the most important things that I can emphasize is make sure whatever you have, you try to like loosen it up, chop it up, bring it up in smaller pieces. We had a little bit of an issue after Halloween and Thanksgiving where people thought they could just bring their whole pumpkins and like dump them in the compost. So I spent a couple days with my knees in compost digging out whole pumpkins. And that's
everybody.
Just because I know, good for everybody. Pumpkins. I love the effort. But if you want to bring your pumpkin, just chop it up for me because then it will break down faster. But yeah, the smaller the better. And if you're keeping things in a paper bag or in a Tupperware and you're keeping it in your freezer, just remember to dump that bag out and then tear the bag up and put it in. And then also those like compostable bags that you're finding at grocery stores, people were just like throwing that in with their scraps inside. And again, remember what I said about like good rot and bad rot. So if you don't empty it out, it doesn't get air in it. So then it just rots. And so those bags actually work well for giant facilities that are industrial, but not community compost bins. So we always have to take those out too, which is sad. So yeah, but you can keep them in your freezer. The best thing to do is like get an ice cream tub kind of situation. If you can't come every week, then like keep it in your freezer and you can dump frozen stuff in there. Just dump it in, follow it with some mulch from the bins next to it, and then drive away. Or stick around and hang out. I don't care.
Yeah. No, those are great tips. Yeah, because we're so busy, we can't just like, you know, mosey on over anytime. I think the freezer tip is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And I see a question here about any advice for getting folks in an office environment to start composting, even dropping off food scraps at the garden. Yeah. So one of the things that I did at my last job was we had a bin in the group kitchen, you know, like where everybody went when they weren't teaching. So I worked at a school. And the important thing to realize with scraps at a school and your lunches that you're bringing in is you just need to do a little bit of education around what people can and can't compost. So things like meat on a sandwich, they can't throw like the meat in that sandwich in there. Or yogurt or things like that. So, but if they have an apple rind or something from their lunch, a banana peel, you could keep that next or like under the sink at your work. And then, or in your freezer, you could keep it in the freezer at work if you have a little shared communal kitchen. And then appoint somebody to drop it off at the community compost bin. And maybe that's a rotation so that, you know, you guys take turns and you're dedicated to it. And also like, if you're in the community, if you're in San Gabriel Valley, like reach out to us or our partner Food Ed, and like we can come in and talk to you guys about compost too. And just tell people why this is important. So, so yeah, so there's ways, but I think that that's, you kind of have to have an office champion of it. And sometimes that can be kind of annoying to be that person ringing that bell, but if you get people kind of in that habit of like, oh, my apple core, I can put this in the freezer. That can, and then it won't stink too, because that's the last thing, like a rotting vegetable bin and work. That's how compost fails greatly. Then people are like, we don't want to do that. So, no,
I really like that advice. Okay, let's see. That's all the questions I had ready for you guys. If you have anything else you'd like to know, please type in your questions. I know I've seen any other. I've seen videos. Sorry,
go ahead.
Overlap here. I've seen videos of people like attempting to cook with the heat that comes off of their compost bin. Is that a possibility? Does that work?
I mean, I've seen some very like bougie places starting to do that, and I feel like it's a novelty of like, yes, it's 170 degrees, but like if you think about it, like that's gonna take. Like if you were to cook salmon at 200 degrees, like it would take you hours, you know? Like, so, and you would need to really make sure that temperature doesn't fluctuate because otherwise you're just going to breed bacteria. So it's kind of a novelty if people can really know what they're doing with the temperature. I think for the most part, like don't overwhelm yourself, like just throw scraps in the backyard and call it a day. Like that's what I do. Like I'm not really worried about, hot compost and maintaining it in the ways that, like, some people that are super dedicated to hot composting are. There's room for all of us at all entry levels with compost. Tumblers, people think that they're really easy systems to use, but they actually require the most attention. So in terms of tumblers, you have to be adding stuff every day. You have to be monitoring that. It really keeps the moisture, and it's probably like seems really easy, but you just have to keep an eye on it. Whereas like a hot compost or a slow cold compost, you only really have to pay attention to that once a week. And even with cold compost, you could just check out if you really wanted to. So, but I mean, really, the most important thing in a garden is gardener's shadow. So don't check out of your garden. It's important. But yeah, there's all different ways to get involved and to compost. So
yeah, I feel like sometimes low tech is the best way to go.
It is. And I feel like people these days think they need all the gadgets and all the tools and all the things. I will say about tumblers, like if you have a huge critter problem, it's probably a safer way to go. If you live, like in North Monrovia, and you've got things that are wanting to come eat all your scraps. But again, tumblers, I've talked with so many people that get so discouraged. Yeah, I got one of those tumblers, but then you check them and they weren't paying attention to it a lot, and they didn't really know that you need to be checking on it almost every day to make sure it's really breaking down. And things have to be really small when they go in there. So it takes more uptick on the front end to like chop everything up and be turning it. So yeah, but there's the best way to garden is to jump in. It's kind of like the whole mantra of like, you have to be in shape before you start working out. You're not going to know how to garden or compost until you start doing it. So if I can encourage anybody, like just start jumping in and doing it, and then you'll figure it out, and know that there's people in the community that want to help you and want to get involved. So, and answering your questions and all that stuff. So we're available, and eventually we'll get back to our pop-ups, and we'll have a table at the farmer's market and some other stuff. So people will be able to access us more easily, but we're going to get out of COVID, and we're going to be able to do that soon. So yeah.
What's the best, or where is the best resource to check for updates from the community garden?
The community garden, our social media, everything we post on Instagram, we're probably the most active, but most things that are on Instagram also get posted on Facebook. We're trying to get some more resources to be able to bring our newsletter back and some other stuff. But the website is mostly up to date, mind you, we can all be gracious with volunteer organizations right now, because we're all trying to do the best we can. So sometimes, things might be a week or two behind, but I would say Instagram and Facebook are always up to date. And then the Monrovia Today magazine also always has a 1-page or half-page ad about the classes happening. So, so always look in the Monrovia Today to see what's happening that season. And know that our class rotation is every other month. So we just had one week that was spring veggies and irrigation. And then in July, Judy will be, May and June always feel like packed in Monrovia with like schools getting out and graduation. So we have our class July 10th. I think it's at 1 p.m., but double check. This will be a good, you guys can go and cross check the facts, fact check. So maybe lessons of today: don't start with cooking in your compost pile. Just start with composting in your compost pile, seeing what happens, and have fun. It's important. My 4-year-old's chore in our house is to take the scraps to the compost bin, and so get kids involved too. It's a really beautiful thing to see them participating in the chores at home and taking his little bucket out, every other day or so. And he walks out to the garden and dumps it in. And now he's starting to pick up on like how to water things and how to, we have like a little rototiller, like just this little tool thing. And is he really tilling it in there? No, but he's learning. And that's just such fun to see him doing that too. So I'm so grateful to this community. I'm so grateful for the community garden. And just reach out if you have questions. We're here for you. So we are on the corner more and more these days. We're going to have a work day in a couple weeks again. We just planted everything for the spring. And so you'll start to see our tomatoes come in. And another thing, just if you don't know on the corner if it's ripe, send us a message, because a lot of kids were picking carrots before they were ready. So we're trying to work on some kind of system right now to let people know when things are ripe. But yeah, wait till the tomatoes are ripe because they're going to be better. So, but yeah,
awesome.
It's a great little space that's become just a little gem in Monrovia. Oh, I talked too much. Now my throat's all scratchy.
Oh no, oh sorry. We'll wrap it up soon. Any other questions you guys may have? We'll take a few more. Don't forget to check out the compost bins at the community garden. It's a really great place.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Just a few more moments. Thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yeah.
All right. So it says July 10th workshop is at 10 a.m. Thank you, Big Hat Ladies Garden. And don't forget to check our Book to Action landing page on the library's website for any upcoming events.
Yeah, and thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to Books to Action for this great community grant. It's just a really beautiful.
Yeah, really cool stuff. All right, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us.
And I tried to go get a drink of water.
Have a good day, Kristin. Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.